Hello, welcome to Kay's in the Garden. I'm Kay, and this is my garden. Okay, so tonight we are expecting freezing temperatures, and so I decided to come out and prep the garden. I wasn't going to cover anything. A lot of the more sensitive plants are starting to slow down in production. We've harvested quite a bit, but I decided to go ahead and cover. I started off with a few beds, but it turned into a lot of beds. And I decided to bring you guys along with me. So I wanted to first, before we kind of go into the garden, I wanted to explain to you why we cover our plants. And it's not because of the fact that these plants are not cold hardy. It's more because of the ice. It's because of the freezing ice that forms on the leaves. And I'll show you when we get into the garden some examples of what happens. So when the temperatures drop this low and ice forms on the leaves, it will burn the leaves. And when the leaves die off, then it's hard for the plant to gather nutrients, and eventually they will die off too, or the stems and the roots are damaged as well. And then that will cause it to die off. So that's why we cover it. Again, not because it's cold, but because of the ice that forms on the leaves. And it causes kind of a burn type effect, and that damages the plant. So before we go into garden, I'm going to show you how I actually cover my garden. So I have these sticks, and I'm not sure of the material, but they're pretty firm. But you connect them with these little metal rings. So you will place one stick in one end and then the other stick in the other end, and it forms this longer stick. And I can kind of keep building on by just connecting more of the metal rings, which allows me to then put them in the bed and then form an arch. When I form an arch, I will then add these clips onto them that holds the fabric that's covering the beds. So that's how I build the foundation. This is what I use. There's lots of different things you can use. In the past, what I've done is I've had sticks, and then I've just made sure my fabric was thick enough not to pierce through the stick, or I put a tennis ball on top, and then I've used that as an arch to cover. You can use practically anything that would give you some elevation. So let me show you the fabric, or what I put to cover the plants. All right, this is the fabric that I use, and this is a frost fabric. And as you can see, it is a little see-through. So it allows like sunlight to come through. It allows the wind come through, but it does repel a little bit of the water that would cause like freezing on the leaves. So this is what, I have a roll of this, and so I kind of cut it to size, and then I will cover the beds with this. In addition to the clips that I use, I'll also anchor them around the base of the bed with these stakes. So it's another way to kind of make sure that there's no moisture getting through the fabric or underneath the fabric that could settle on the leaves, causing the burn effect. In addition to this fabric, there's other things that you can use if you don't have this fabric. Like I've used sheets. I've also used, today I'm going to demonstrate with this blanket. I purchased this blanket from a secondhand store, a thrift store, or I might have extra blankets sitting around. What you want is something that is going to prevent a lot of the moisture from getting into the plant, and that does have some airflow that can get through it. I'm going to use this on the cabbages, and so I don't really think the cabbages need to be covered, but I'm going to use this as an example for today, just to show you you can use different things. I've heard of people using tarps, trash bags. I've always been told not to use something that doesn't have some form of airflow through it, because it could cause your plants to sweat. And if they sweat, then that will freeze. So then you're not preventing the frost. So I've never used tarps, so I'm not quite sure if that works or not. But if that's all you have, I'm pretty sure that's better than not covering them at all. So let's get into the garden and take a look at what I've already covered and then show you a bed that I'm going to cover. Okay. Okay, so the very first thing I'm going to do is harvest this broccoli. So just in case these plants don't make it, I don't want to lose my harvest. So I'm going to go ahead and harvest the broccoli. And I do believe I have some cauliflower that I want to show you. I'm really surprised to see that the cauliflower, but we're going to harvest that first and then we'll finish covering the beds. The first head I'm going to harvest is this one here. We saw this in one of the last videos. It's not very large, but it's broccoli. We have a small head here. And I do believe we have another one on the back side. Always remember when you're harvesting to cut your broccoli at a slant, because the piece or the one that's remaining, when the water hits this, you want it to roll off. I'm going to also harvest some of these leaves that are kind of standing, that are poking outward, because when we cover this, it's going to be in the way. And if for any reason these plants don't make it, then at least I would have gotten one more harvest. These are side shoots. This broccoli has continued to put out quite a few shoots. And they're actually delicious shoots. Very sweet. I'm going to leave this one. It actually has gone to flower. Hopefully I can get some seeds from this. Each one of these flowers will have a pod on it that will produce, I don't know, 10 or so seeds. So you don't need to have a lot of them go to seed, but leaving 1 or 2 is always helpful if you like to save your own seeds. And there's a bee on this one, so we're definitely going to leave it. Okay, so we're going to move over to this bed. In this bed, we're going to cover it. I actually have it already prepped for covering, so we're going to finalize the cover on this. But I also have to go ahead and harvest this because I know this broccoli probably will not make it through this frost. That's a nice head of broccoli. So we're going to harvest that. And I didn't cut this one very well, so I'm going to try to cut it again. And then this plant here has quite a few small side shoots. I'm just going to harvest for snacking. They have quite a few smaller bite-sized snacks. Now let me show you. Here's a leaf that fell off. This is what I mean by frost damage. And so it looks like the plant has been burned. You can see, and it's right where the damage is. It's very weak. And so you can see there's a lot of damage on that. There's a couple more leaves over in the first bed we just harvested from. So if the entire leaf looks like that, you can just imagine that whole thing is dead. But when you do have frost damage, you can still leave. If it has some damage, you still can leave it because it still can pull nutrients or energy from the other part of the leaf that's not damaged. But when you have a frost like we're going to have tonight, it's pretty much going to damage the entire plant. Okay, I'm going to bring you in a little bit closer so that you're able to see me cover this. Again, I've already have my arch here. I'm just going to use the fabric that you see back here. I'm going to pull it over and then I'll stake it. I'll clamp it and then stake it around the bottom. Okay, so what I'm going to do is show you exactly what I've done. So the most important thing is to try to have enough coverage. So there's space between the covering and the leaves, but there will be some places you can see here that the leaves are touching it. So I might have some damage there, but for the most part, if I have one or two leaves that are damaged, that's fine. But you want to make sure, like I said, there's different ways you can secure it. I've secured this to the edge of the bed, but I've tucked it and tightened it so that airflow can't get through these spaces. So I've tucked this really nice and tight and I've pulled it and clipped it here. I do want to fix this a little bit. This is a little loose. I'll pull it a little bit tighter. I like it for it to have a nice tight fit. So that way, if the wind starts blowing, it will be fine. I do need to grab another clip because I want to clip this. This is still a little loose for me. I do want to clip that. Oop, I have a clip right here. I was prepared for that. Okay. All right. And so I'm going to go around and look for any gaps. You don't want moisture to get into any gap. Let's move over to another bed. I'll let you take a look at one that I've already prepped. In this bed, we have collard greens and kohlrabi. I still have a few kohlrabi that I don't want to lose. And we have Brussels sprouts. Brussels sprouts are very cold hardy, so I don't think that they'll be damaged. But if they do, it wouldn't be a complete loss for me. I like Brussels sprouts, they're just not my favorite. But here I've really got a nice tight fit on this, and it is secured with the stakes all the way around, just to prevent any moisture from getting through. The garlic here and in my green stock should be fine. The garlic really needs the cold stratification for them to split into multiple cloves. So I'm not covering the garlic. Plus the main part of the garlic is in the ground. I just noticed these weeds, but I also noticed there are like 4 garlic cloves in this bed. This one looks like it's split into 2. There's one back there and there's one right there. I don't think I planted that many. Maybe I did because there's 4 in this one. There's 2 there. And then in the back, I don't know if you can see that, it's split into 2. Well, we're going to see how that turns out because I still have some beds that didn't germinate. Okay. Back to covering the beds. This is the onion bed. I don't think that I need to cover the onion bed, but I didn't plant as many onions as I have in previous years, so I want to protect my onions. And so I will come through with the stakes and I'm going to stake this into the ground. I wanted to leave that open so that I can show you guys the onions. So we'll come back to this. And moving over to my surprise of the day, look at that. Isn't she beautiful? That's a nice size cauliflower head. I do think this one over here has also started. On our last video, we talked about we believe that they were starting to form a head, but they actually have. And I'm going to harvest those. Okay, so the last bed we're going to work on is this cabbage bed. There was cabbage in the broccoli bed that we just covered together. However, I'd already pre-covered those. This particular bed we're going to cover, and we're going to use that blanket, the blanket that I showed you at the beginning of the video. Let's get to covering this last bed before the temperature drops. Okay, and for the cabbages, I'm just going to cover it with this blanket. And you don't need the arches to be really tall because you don't want to use up most of your cover on the height when it doesn't need to be that tall. So I'm just going to toss that over. I am just clipping them to the edge of the bed. So we now have this cabbages covered, and I have a nice good tension on it so it's not drooping and sitting on the cabbage. Okay guys, so that's the video for today. We have actually covered majority of our beds. We're going to leave one of our broccoli beds uncovered, but we're covering our kohlrabi, our collard greens, our onions, and our cabbages. And so we're leaving our spinach. I think the more mature cabbages on the side of the house, I think those will be fine. I do have turnips in this bed here, and so I'm considering covering those. I still need to pull out that tomatoes and bell peppers that were damaged in the last light frost we had. So I do need to cover those. I also have lemon balm here that I'll take into the garage. I'm not sure if you noticed, but there was a lemon tree, there was a pomegranate, and I also have a cherry tree that actually has been taken into the garage. So my husband did that last night. So everything else I think will be fine through the frost. And I'll pick you guys back up after this weekend and let you see how everything turned out. But I think we should be fine. So let me know what you're doing to cover your garden. Are you covering your garden? And if so, what are you covering? Everything or just your frost sensitive items like I am? So good luck with your garden during this Arctic freeze. All right, have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.